going to be talking about dot plots and histograms in Excel today. So first, we're going to talk about going from data to dot plots. Remember, before, we always had to go from data to frequency tables and then to some visualization. Dot plots are nice because they can let you go straight from data directly to the visualization. Then we're going to talk about going from data to histograms. Now, histograms are going to be really helpful to us, especially because a lot of times we're going to have variables that have many values. So we're going to talk about how to have ungrouped values, which we've looked at before, and grouped values. And then finally, we're just going to talk a little bit about plotting frequencies versus relative frequency. Relative frequency is just a fancy way of saying it's frequency but divided by how many cases you have. So it's really like percentage. All right, so previously, we always had to go from data, and we had to stop over at making a frequency table, and then go to the visualization. But now with dot plots, we cut out the middleman, and we can go directly from data to the visualization. So that's a really handy thing there. So if you look in your Excel file, the data is going to be the same as the data we've been working with, the 100 Facebook friends. But here's what we're going to do. Before, we had created a nice little graph using the Excel tools to create a visualization. But now we're going to use dot plots. Now, Excel won't create dot plots for you directly. Instead, we have to sort of fudge it. But the fudge actually comes in handy sometimes. All right, so let's go to birth month. We already know that birth month should have a uniform distribution. We've already looked at this data before. What we're going to do is just look at how to transform it directly from data into a visualization without having to use the Excel graphs, or charts as they call it. All right, so if you go to your birth month sheet, here I've just put up the months 1 through 12, and here's it just looks sort of like a frequency table. But if you watch carefully, we're going to transform it. All right, so let's go ahead and put in our regular formula for how to find frequency. So that's equal sign because we're starting off with a function. Count if, because we want it to count if that person was born in the month of January. And let's put in our data. So if we click on data, and we scroll down to months, all right, here's birth month. I'm going to select all of these rows. So far, it seems like we're just making a frequency table, right? And I'm going to put in a comma, because I know I'm going to need that. Let's go back to birth month. All right, and I want you to count it if the birth month is January. Now, if we just hit enter here, that would mean, hey, we're just counting up how many people were born in January. Well, we're going to do something a little bit different. I want Excel to visualize for me how many people there are. Not give me a number, but actually show me in sort of pictures, right? Here's what we're going to use. We're going to use the repetition function. And so that's REPT. You don't have to put it in capital. I just wanted to distinguish it from the count if. And put a parenthesis, because that's how you are going to put in the inputs. Now, here, Excel reminds us that we need text, whatever text you want to repeat over and over again, and the number of times. The text, you could pick your favorite text. You just have to make sure that it's in quotation marks. So I'm going to put in an @ symbol. It's my favorite one. So I'm going to close parentheses and put in a comma. Now, the beautiful thing about count if is that it's going to return to me a number. The output is going to be a number. So if I just leave this here, it'll just output to me 7, right? And so this function will actually read, repeat this @ symbol 7 times, all right? So at the end of this, I'm going to put a closed parenthesis, right? So that my parentheses match up. And then I'm going to hit enter. Ah, great. And let me just make these rows a little bit larger so you can see everything. All right. So here, instead of having the number 7, I have 7 little symbols. And you don't have to use the @ sign if you don't want to. You could use a star, an asterisk, right? You could use anything you want. You could use an O. Anything to sort of help you see, oh, there's this many people born in the month of January, right? So this is a direct way of going into the visualization. So now let's, we could actually copy and paste this just like we did before. All we have to do is make sure that our data is locked with our $signs. All right, and I'm going to hit enter. And then all I'm going to do is take that, drag it all the way down, and ta-da, we have a visualization right there. And we didn't have to make Excel do any extra work with its charts or anything like that. So that's the handy thing about a dot plot. Now, we're making dot plots in Excel, but a lot of times you may be asked to make dot plots on paper and pen. No actual statistician does that anymore, but in a statistics class, you may be asked to do that. The nice thing about dot plots is that you don't have to put the data in order or anything. You could just go and just sort of go down the line and put a dot where 5 is, put a dot where 3 is, put a dot where 6 is, put a dot where 9 is. You could see that it's a really easy way to visualize a distribution, and you don't have to do anything to your data beforehand. But once again, doing it by hand, pretty tedious, and people don't really do it that way, at least not when they're doing real statistics. All right, so that's dot plots, but let's talk about the pros and cons. All right, dot plots, pros and cons. The pro is that it's nice and quick. It's quick and dirty, right? Like you could go directly from data to dot plots, no middleman, no frequency tables. You don't have to know anything even about statistics, and you could do it, right? But really, you can only do this with small data sets. It's really not useful with giant data sets. Even our data set of 100 cases, it's considered a relatively small data set. But imagine if you had like thousands of cases. I mean, just to even see your dots like go all the way to the side, I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy, right? So really, it only works with small data sets. So that's sort of a pro and a con. When you have a small data set, this is a really nice thing to do. Con is it can't handle a lot of data points. All right. So another pro is that it shows you the actual individual values. So you know exactly what each dot stands for. And it doesn't group cases together. So everything's sort of spread out for you. And it shows you the shape of the distribution. With our example, we saw once again that it's a uniform distribution, and you could see that right away. Now the cons is sort of the opposite of the, well, not the opposite, but it's sort of, it's really the same features as the pros, but considering it from a different goal perspective. So one of the pros is that you can handle small data sets really well, but the con is that it can't handle a lot of data points. The other con is that because it shows these individual values, it can't group the cases together. All right. Oh, but I forgot to show you one thing. So if you go back to the birth month sheet, one thing is this is a sort of, I'm not sure whether to call it vertical or horizontal, but here each row sort of represents one of the values of this variable, right? Now, sometimes you may be asked to create a dot plot where the dots are sort of going up and down, right? So I'll call that the vertical version, right? It's really easy to make that once you've created this. Here's how to do it. And this is a nice trick with just, it's just something nice to know with Excel as well. So if you copy this, I'm using Command-C here. And I'm just going to paste it over here on the side. I guess I'll paste it here for now. We're going to have to change this, but I'll paste it down here so that you could see it going up. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to paste it special, all right? And so if you go to Edit, you should be able to see something that says Paste Special. And not a lot of people use this, but if you click on Paste Special, something like this will come up. Now, what I want Excel to do is transpose it. What used to be columns, I want it to put it in rows. So I'm going to hit transpose. So it's going to just paste it, but it's going to transpose paste it. I'm going to hit OK. And here what we find is that it's put all of my rows into columns and columns into rows. Now what I'm going to do is take these months here, and I'm going to cut them, Command X, and I'm going to paste them below my frequency, Command V. And then I'm going to select these dots from my dot plot, and then I'm going to use my formatting palette to tell it to face it in a vertical manner rather than horizontal. So let's look at what this looks like. I'm going to take this row and, make it a little bigger so you can see. And I'm going to take all of these and shrink my column a little bit so that you could see it all at the same time. All right. Hopefully you were able to follow along with that. Now you see that what I've done is I've taken my previously horizontal dots and I've made my dots vertical, right? It's just formatting. It's nothing special. Obviously, you could also do this from the very beginning if you know that that's the way you need to do your dot plot. Basically, the information is the same, though, that you could see that it's a roughly uniform distribution. There's not one month that's particularly popular. There does seem to be this sort of like repeating pattern, though. But that's transposing dot plots. All right. So now let's go on. Let's go on to histograms. Histograms will probably be the most frequent frequency distribution you use in your statistics course and sort of in statistics real life. So histograms are pretty easy to understand. All you have to do is imagine drawing a rectangle around the dots so that you don't see individual dots anymore, but you see rectangles, right? And what's nice about histograms is that you could group cases into bins. For instance, we could put everybody who's born in the winter months together into one rectangle. So we could have December, January, February in one rectangle. And then we could bin together other months into another rectangle. And this is going to be useful to us when we have variables that have a lot of values. For instance, take the example of a variable like friends. Friends is going to be an interesting variable to look at what's the distribution of friends like in our Facebook sample. But people can have one friend, people can have 15 friends, people can have 500 friends or 600 friends or 1,000 friends, right? So the question is, wow, are we going to have a column for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 1,000, right? That seems pretty crazy, right? If we had an ungrouped frequency table, it would look insane. We'd probably have from like 1 all the way up to, let's be conservative and say, 500, right? So we have 1 all the way up to 500. And then maybe we have one person that has 1, and then another person that has 3, and a couple people that have 10, 12, and 15, and, but probably not one particular value of friends, like 273 is going to be that popular, right? So it'll be like it'll be like everybody just has like one person in their bin, right? Every value won't have very many cases. So an ungrouped frequency table would be really, really unhelpful to us. In this case, we'd want to use a grouped frequency table. We'd probably want to bin everybody who has from 0 to 100 friends together, and then from 101 to 200 friends together, and from 201 to 300 friends together, something like that. That'll probably